Welcome, everyone. My name is Tim McMullen. I'm one of the presenters today. And just quick background on myself. This is all I've done professionally for my entire career around document data capture and extraction. We're not going to bore you a lot of this with PowerPoint today, so we're going to move right into things. My co-presenter is Jason McManus, and he's basically my counterpart on the workflow and ECM side and content side. So the two of us together are going to tag team this, although I think Jason's going to be doing most of the heavy lifting today. And again, we're not going to bore you with PowerPoint. I think this is the last PowerPoint slide we have until the very end. The next hour, what we're going to go through with you is really show you an entire AP processing solution, as opposed to just showing you pieces or just extraction or just workflow. So we really wanted to get something that shows the positive outcomes that can be gained from an AP automation solution. So we're also going to focus on how much you can improve the process, how low touch an invoice processing system can be by utilizing these technologies. So feel free to ask questions in the chat. We're going to have everybody muted, but if we have enough time at the end, we'll definitely get to your questions. And if we don't, we're taking note of them. We will follow up with each and every one of you personally to make sure that we answer all your questions and that we cover everything needed to. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into it with Jason.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. For my guys, just a quick audio check. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep, perfect.
All right, good deal. As Tim mentioned, my name is Jason McManus. Similar to him, I've been in the industry for a long time. I've participated in a lot of solutions helping people automate AP invoice processing. And that's going to be the focus today. We're going to try not to dig down too deep into the technologies that we're showing. We really want to focus on the outcome, the benefit of the solutions, and walk you through the day in the life, more the art of the possible, leveraging technology to automate some of these low-level human activities. So I'm going to walk you through a couple phases. So the first phase we're going to talk about is what we call the ingestion phase. We have to get to information to process. And I'm going to show you a scan process where we're scanning in a day's worth of invoices that were mailed in. But we also support email import. We support RPA technologies, where if we had to go download these invoices from like a self-service portal, we could do that. We can work with multifunction devices, network attached devices, import from file shares. Really, it's unlimited, the number of ways that we can get to the content that we need to process. And then there's going to be a series of attended activities that are going to happen in the background. And I haven't shown anything yet. We're about to dive into all of this, but we're going to go through and condition the invoices, make them text searchable. We're going to use technology to read that text and auto separate and organize the invoices. After that, we're going to use technology to auto collect all the key data elements off of it, header, footer data, all the tabular data, the detailed line item information. We're then going to go through a process to validate that all the data is accurate, applying things like business rules and logic, math. There's a number of things we're going to do there. We'll then have a human operator deal with any exceptions that might come up. Then we're going to put them in a long-term system for storage, for easy access, governance, and then more importantly, workflow, automation of the transactions that need to be applied to it, whether those are attended or unattended, integration with an ERP system, so we can do lookups, notify the ERP system that this one has been approved, all those types of things. So we're going to walk you through all those steps in today's presentation, actually showing you some product as we go through it. As Tim mentioned, if you have some questions or comments, just post those in the chat. If we have time at the end, we'll answer those. If we don't, we will have one of our representatives get with you after the fact. So I'm not sure if we can get through all of this in the next 55 minutes or not, but we're definitely going to try. So let's start with phase one, ingestion. We've got invoices we need to process. So I'm going to open up a web scan tool that we have available. This is our product we call Grouper. And when I open this up, I can come in and launch a scan activity. So in this case, I've already got one triggered up, invoices. See, it's already ready to scan. I can just click on that. And I'm using Google Chrome right now. And we support just about any high-speed scanner manufactured on the market today. So anything that supports ISIS or Twain, we support. And with ISIS, we get full high-speed rated throughput with our web capture tool. So there's no degradation in speed, no performance loss, and no limitation in what scanners you can use. We've tested this web UI with scanners going up to 199 pages per minute. So this is designed to support high-speed, high-production type environments. So in this case, I'm a user. And I just opened up today's mail and I've got a stack of invoices that I need to get into the process. So I put those in a document feeder. We want to minimize the amount of prep work that has to happen here. So remember, our goal is to automate any type of human activities, especially those low-level human activities, those low-value activities that we can, so we can free up your staff to go do more valuable activities. So in this case, we don't want to have to use separator sheets. We don't want to have to put barcode sheets or something special in between the documents. We don't want to have to sort these out into different doc types, different vendors, different batches. We just want to be able to open the mail, stick it in the scanner, come up here, hit the scan button, which is exactly what we're doing in today's presentation. So you'll notice after I hit the scan button, we've got a series of images that kind of come up in a thumbnail mode on the left. And then on the right, you see a full screen version of that. So at this point, your user is doing nothing more than opening the mail, sticking it in the scanner and hitting the go button. Like I said, we don't want them to have to do a whole lot of prep work other than maybe remove staples if there were any, pulling them from the envelope. That's about all we want them to have to do. Everything else, we want the technology to do. So if I scroll through here and just flip through a few of these, you'll notice that there's nothing separating one invoice from another. You can tell right there, we went from Cornell to EMC, but there's nothing other than my eyeball telling me that, and my brain cognitively looking at these documents. So there's nothing that the users have done up to this point. So all I'm really doing here is just verifying these images look good. We didn't have any double feeds or crunched up paper or anything like that.
Now, Jason, tell me about the color documents on here, because I'm seeing as you're going through, we've got a mixture, and typically that's not something that's seen in these types of systems. You either have black or white or you have color, but a mixture is not something we do. So can you talk to that a little bit?
Absolutely. That's a great point there. I'm glad you brought that up. With traditional document processing platforms, a lot of them will tell you they support color scanning. But what they really do in the background is they downgrade the image quality to either grayscale or bitonal when they perform activities like OCR, because they haven't developed their technology to truly support color images. Within Grouper, we do support color processing. All our activities support color. And the reason we do that is because of pixelation in the images when you're doing activities like OCR. So if I were to zoom in on this image right now and just really zoom in really heavy on the word page right here, this 24-bit color image wouldn't look as pixelated. As you get down to the pixels, they're really just little blocks that are certain colors that make that up. That's what the OCR engines are looking at. If I were to change this image, and I'm going to show you something really cool we can do here, we have a technology called Scan Once that will allow me at any point in time as a user to change the scanner settings that would have been applied to this at the point of scan, but do it without actually having to rescan the document. I'm going to come in here and let's see what this image would look like as a grayscale image. So in the background, other technologies would downgrade this to something like this before they performed OCR. We still get good results on this, but not as good of results as we would get on the color image. And then I also could drop it down to bitone, which is what a lot of systems will tell you. Just scan in black and white. Again, we support this. You can do this, but we typically are going to suggest the highest quality images possible while we're processing stuff inside the IDP system, which is the document processing system.
Throw in a question here really quickly because somebody asked about faxes, and that's a great point. So what we're showing here is scanning from simulated scanning. We can also pull from any type of system, so either email or fax. Now, with fax, just understand that the less data you have, there's going to be other challenges in there. So we'd really want to look at that closely to see, because a computer-to-computer fax is much better than, say, something that was printed and then faxed through an old roller fax. And so,
correct, yeah. And most fax systems nowadays are
computer,
running off a computer server or some type of cloud service. So we integrate with those. So we can leverage and use those images just like we could images coming in via email or being produced off of a scanner. We really don't care where they come from. And again, we can process the black and white. We can do the grayscale. We can do the color. The better image we have, the higher accuracy we're going to get off of it. Now, we do have a patented technology that we call synthetic OCR that allows us to get better results off of those lower quality images as well. So it's not a must that we do color. It's just a preference when we're doing this.
So Jason, now how does that affect the file size? Because that's obviously a big issue, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because if I look at this color image, the file size on that's going to be considerably larger than the grayscale, and that's going to be considerably larger than the black and white or the bitonal, as we call it. So when we're doing the processing, OCR, organization, the extraction, any of those activities, we're in a transient state at that point. We're just holding that high quality image to get the best data off of it. But then when we actually put it in the repository for long-term storage, we can convert the file formats and the DPI if we wanted to. So I could actually convert this to a bitonal image after I'm done with it before I put it in a long-term system for storage, thus saving expensive storage space. So it's very easy. This would be a completely automated thing that a user would never have to deal with to downgrade the image quality to whatever you want it to be for long-term storage. And that's something that you can configure and set up on your own. Okay. So we've got 44 images that we just scanned in. Right now, I'm just sitting at my scan client still. So if I wanted to add some more pages, if I couldn't fit them all in the document feeder, I could just hit the scan button again and just keep adding to this batch. But I'm done for the day. This was my batch. So I'm going to hit this commit button, complete current task button. And when I do, that series of unattended activities is going to happen in the background. So we're going to take every image, make it text searchable. Then we're going to read the text and separate it by invoice. That's going to happen using a separate technique that we have built into Grouper. We're going to classify it, identify the vendor. That's also going to happen automatically. We're then going to extract all the data elements. So things like the PO number, the invoice date, the total amount, all the detail items, all that's going to be extracted and all go through validation procedures. I'm not going to make you watch all that because I'm going to skip to the next thing a human would have to do, which is dealing with the exceptions. So I'm going to hit commit. All those things are going to happen in the background. And then I'm going to show you what the users are going to see. So there are the 45 pages we just scanned in. They're now dropped down to 37 invoices. How did that happen? How did we lose 8 items or 7? Actually, I think it was 44 because we're now counting invoices, not pages. So as I mentioned, we're going to have some 2-pagers. I think we've got one that's 3 pages, in here, and then we've got a lot of 1-pagers. So Grouper was able to automatically go through and sort those things, saving a lot of manual labor, time, and effort going through and prepping these things, either using separator sheets or manually going through and organizing. We don't want you to have to do that. Now, we parked on item 1 because it's always going to, just stop here on item 1. Everything's accurate with this one. So you don't see anything highlighted in red. Everything's good. You'll notice up here to the right, we have this little icon that's got a 3 to the left of it. That is the number of documents that we saw some type of error in. And when I say error, that means it didn't meet our validation rule. So we're not going to just let the technology export this data to your ERP system without knowing it's valid data. So we're going to do a number of things. We're going to do lookups against the PO number if we found a PO number. Validate that matches what was on the PO, what came out of the ERP system. We're going to do math and apply things like the quantity times the unit price versus a line item total. That's got to match. We can build in variances and tolerance levels. We can build in all types of business logic, data rules. We can get very sophisticated. We can do things like translating currencies, detect what the currency was, and maybe change the validation based off of if this was in euros or if this was in dollars. We can detect and process invoices in multiple languages. So there's lots of things that can happen. Today's demo is pretty simple. We have 3 errors. So I want to go see my first error as an operator. So I'm just going to click this icon. It takes me to invoice 10. So we jump from 1 to 10. And on invoice 10, it stopped on invoice amount. I'm looking at the invoice amount. I hover my mouse over it, and it tells me it expected the value to be $39.80, but it was $39.88 in change. So it's off by $7.60. If I look at the actual image, 3988.34 is the actual total. So the OCR was correct. That means we've got an issue somewhere else. Remember, we can do math. So I can take all these detail line items, add them up. I can add freight, sales tax, remove discounts, and make sure that everything adds up to the penny. And if it doesn't, it gets flagged. So in this case, it didn't add up, and it was $7.60 off. So if I look at the image, the first thing that stands out to me is I got a line item on here. This next to last one, quantity of 20, 38 cents a unit for $7.60 total. So if I look over here at the data we collected, we go from the line item for $111 to the one for $45. So we missed this one. Now, we manufacture a lot of these errors for the demos. This typically wouldn't happen in a production environment. One thing I want to point out here is notice these line items are multi-row. So that's difficult for a lot of capture technologies, OCR technologies, to address and deal with that. We have techniques. We actually have multiple techniques for reading and collecting this data. Makes it much easier, much more accurate for us to get to it. But in this case, we wanted to simulate something so you would see what happens. Well, what happens if it misses a line item? It catches it. So it stopped us and told us, you need to review this. So how do I address it? Well, I can just simply go down here, right click and say insert row. Put a new row in so it's in the correct spot. And now I got to type in my quantity, type in 20, hit tab, takes me to my next field, which is item description. I'm lazy. I don't want to have to type that whole description. So I can just right click, do a rubber band OCR, and then rubber band the section that I want. I might have did that too small. No, I got it. Then hit tab, go to my next field. That's our unit price. That's 38 cents. Tab again, go to my line item total, should have been $7.60. And now when I hit tab, notice my invoice amount, which was in red, is no longer in red. Every time I tab out of a field, it reruns my calculations. It reruns those mathematical algorithms that we've got built in to validate this information. So now it comes back and says, we're good to go. So now I can hit my next questionable button up here. Notice it goes from 3 to 2. We fixed one of our validation errors. And we jump from invoice 10 to invoice 33. Now on invoice 33, we've got another one where we've got an invoice amount issue. If I scroll down to this one, it's telling me you're off by $3. So same thing, I'm going to scroll down. First thing I want to look at is my total, 349.79. So that's correct. So if I look at my header data, which is usually the first place I look when I have a issue with a total, first thing I notice is sales tax is $3 and we're off by $3. So what does that mean? Let's go look at our tax. Notice our tax is 0, but it collected it as 3. Notice that someone took and just put a little slash through here. Again, we intentionally manufacture some of these errors so we can talk about these scenarios and what would happen. But in this case, it stopped it. So the math doesn't add up. You got a problem somewhere. So I find where my problem is, take that 3 out, I hit tab, and now we're done. My red goes away. I can come in here, click my next questionable. Notice we go down to 1 now. We go to invoice 37. And on this particular one, we have 3 actual errors within that one invoice, and they're all math errors. So again, you can look at my invoice amount. It's telling me it's off by $61.80. Then I also can come down here and look at my line items and say that I had 2 different line items where I had math errors. So this one for the flyer, it's telling me 6.3 times 40 doesn't equal 260. So look, we go up, look at the image, 6.3, 40, and 260 are actually the correct numbers. But if you pull your calculator out, I mean, you don't even probably have to pull your calculator out. You can just look at those numbers until that's wrong. So what happened here? We've seen this scenario in production environments where you may have a contract with vendors for certain things that allow them to round numbers. So in this case, that's what happened here. So we're ordering services and we had 6.3 hours at an hourly rate of $40, but in this particular case, they were allowed to round that up to 6.5. But it throws the math off. So we actually can set up a rule, and in this case, we could just apply the rule to Fair Deal as the vendor and say that we allowed this variance or tolerance levels for these items if we wanted to. So instead of it catching it, it would know that was within the tolerance level, allow it to move through the process without flagging it if we wanted to. So we see all kinds of things like this in production environments. There's always something unique. Everybody always thinks they're different, and the reality is they are. Even though we're all processing invoices, dealing with POs, receiver documents, maybe inspection documents, everybody's process is a little bit unique. So having a technology that can accommodate for those unique variances in the way you process your information, stuff you're working with, very important. And every one of these we do, they're very similar, but they're also very different, in nature. So instead of correcting anything here, because the OCR is all correct, that the data matches what was on the image, I'm just going to allow this one to be committed at this point. So we're going to let this one go into the workflow because I know this is actually correct, even though the math is telling me that it's not. And this, again, is something you can configure. Do I want to allow a user to commit one with an error, or should this get kicked up to a manager and they have to approve or review it? All configurable inside the system. All right. So I'm going to hit the complete task button. And now we're done when it comes to what we call the ingestion phase. So we took the mail, we pulled stuff in from email, we downloaded stuff from web portals, wherever it came from, it doesn't really matter. Like I said, we don't care how many different locations, how many different systems you're collecting this information from. We want to accommodate all of them. So now it's all been put into a ECM solution, a repository for easy searching, those types of things. So I'm going to open up what we call our Unity client. and show you those same invoices because they've now been exported out, put in this system, so that your users can come in and access them, view, print, email potentially if you want to give them access to do. Your corporation can set retention policies, trigger workflow rules, all those types of things. And we'll touch on each one of those a little bit more in depth. So what you're looking at right now is a search screen. So you'll notice when I opened up the interface, it took me directly to invoices and it took me directly to my invoices search screen. That's because that's the last place I was at the last time I used the software. You also can enable all of these things directly inside your ERP system. So if you're using SAP, Oracle, Dynamics, doesn't really matter, and you want to set it up so that you can click a button from one of those screens and it will go fetch the related documents that are stored in the repository, you can do those things. You don't have to use this user experience necessarily to do your retrieve. Let's talk a little bit about what got into the repository. So we're going to come back and do some searches, leveraging some of these fields and go through a couple of scenarios. First thing I'm going to do is just a blank search to show you what came over and how that looks. So if I just do a blank search, you're going to get an error message in this case because we've set it up so that if you do a blank search, it gives you a warning. If you had millions and millions of documents in here, you're probably going to truncate this, not let it just return millions and millions of rows of data. In this case, I'm going to bypass that, say sure, because I know I've only got a few documents in here. And now you see all those invoices. And what it's doing right now is it's organizing them by vendor. So out of those 44 invoices, or whatever our total number was, 37, I'm sorry, it's organized them. We had 3 from Carosoft. So if I want to see what those 3 look, I can expand that. And there's all the data we collected that we put in the ECM solution. So then we call these key fields. Some people refer to them as metadata. If I wanted to view one of these, I could just enable my document viewer in screen if I wanted to. So I can just view it right here in screen and tab through if I wanted to my list, or if I wanted to undock it and maybe support a dual monitor view, I could just double click it. And there's my Carosoft invoice in the system. So this was scanned in with Grouper. It was outputted as a full text searchable PDF so that now we can not only search by keywords, but we also can search by anything printed on this document. While I'm viewing it, if I wanted to, I could come up here. There's little keywords that I could click. That shows me all the data that Grouper automatically collected. So I didn't have to do any data entry. None of my staff had to go through and key any of this information in. That was automated and put into the system for me. So that's all the things I can search and find this by. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. You also have the ability to look at a history trail associated with this document. So complete audit trails can be turned on. This can be a very valuable tool. So you're dealing with SOC audits and you need to go back and historically prove who touched a file. Boom, there you go. You can have a complete history of the document, who touched it, when they touched it, what action they performed, all those types of things are tracked. And again, you can security control who can see things like document history. Well, everything I'm going to show you today can be turned on or off by a user or per user or groups if you want to. And it also can be changed based on doc types or file rooms. So we're in a file room called Invoices right now, which is primarily designed to store invoices, but we may also have one for business contracts or other types of files, HR documents. So you can have these all segmented and completely control who has access to what inside the system. Turn that off.
So Jason, you pulled up a bunch of invoices, all the ones you put in there, but I think, how would you find just one? Let's show how we just find one, because that's going to be, I think, more situational of what AP is doing, right? The vendor calls up, says, hey, you haven't paid this.
Absolutely. So let's close this one out. Let's go back to our search screen. And let's just say we want to find our invoices for a company called Enid something. I don't remember if it's Enid Parts, Enid Production, Enid Inc., whatever. I just know it starts with Enid. So I type in Enid, asterisk is our wildcard character. I can hit enter or click my search button. And instead of getting all our invoices, we get 5 that are in the system where the vendor name begins with ENID or Enid. So there they are. They all happen to be Enid Parts. And then again, from here, if I wanted to view them, I can enable my document viewer. Come in here and click on one, or I can launch them separately if I want to. And in doing so, any of these, we can print, fax, email information out of the system. We support annotation. So if I wanted to email this out with a little sticky note that says, hey, here's why we didn't pay this, you overbilled us on this, or this didn't match our PO, those types of things can be put on and removed. And again, you can totally control who can do those specific activities within the system. So there's a search just by something as simple as vendor name. You also could come in and do a search. We'll clear out Enid. Let's say I'm on the phone with an upset vendor that's saying we haven't paid them and they give me an invoice number because maybe we get several invoices from this vendor a week. There's one specific one they're complaining about. So I go to invoice number, type in IN 165796. And again, I can either hit search or hit my enter key. It does a quick search and we've got one. It happens to be a Carasoft invoice. There it is. Invoice IN 165796. Let's take a quick peek at it just to make sure, keep me honest. And there's your invoice number, IN 165796. So that's what we call a key field. It's just a different way you can slice through these files and get directly to what you want. Now, while you're on the phone with that vendor that's upset that you didn't pay this, like I said before, if I wanted to, I could go to the send to option and I can mail it out. I could print it. So there's a number of different ways that you can deliver this information if you wanted to. And then let's just go back, do a couple more searches. And you can use these fields in combination. So what if I wanted to find a Dell invoice? We got a lot of Dell invoices. We do a lot of business with Dell. So I type in vendor name Dell. The only thing else I know about this particular invoice is that it's really old. I know that it was pre-2001. Probably not a realistic scenario. It'll just show you the different ways you can search. So I can come in here and you can do a greater than, less than, equal to, those types of things on a field. So I'm going to do less than, and I'm going to type in a date of 01/01/2001. So I've got two parameters now. It's got to be the vendor name Dell, and the invoice date has to be earlier than January 1st of 2001. Hit search, and we've got one invoice for Dell. Pull this one up. We can see that the invoice date on this one is 12/23/1998. So that's why it found it, because there were no other invoices out there for Dell that were pre-2001, January 1st, 2001. So there's lots and lots of different ways you can slice and dice through these things and get directly to the very specific invoice that you want to work with.
Okay, Jason. So we found our invoices, right? We got that, but I don't think we finished processing yet, did we? We need to get back to our process. So why don't we walk into that now?
Absolutely correct. So all we've really showed you so far is long-term storage, retrieval. We talked a little bit about audit, security, retention capabilities, where we can set retention policies. The other thing I'll mention before we dive too deep into the workflow is some of the other purposes that we might use these index fields for. Searching obviously is very important, but Tim, as you mentioned, we've got a process that needs to happen for this invoice. But does every invoice go through the exact same process? No, there may be rules that say invoices over a certain dollar amount have to go through more levels of approvals. If it's over $10,000, that means managers have to approve it. If it's over $100,000, maybe our CFO has to approve it. So we've got an invoice amount field here. We can trigger what we call conditional procedures off of things like that. We may also want to trigger things off of a zip code. Maybe you've got multiple CBOs or central billing offices throughout the country or the globe. So based off of demographic data, a phone number, an address, maybe we route it to specific groups or users for processing. So we can use these fields to trigger those things. So let's go see what that looks like. So we're going to switch to our workflow view, same user experience, just literally click a button called workflow. And you'll notice that we've created a workflow called AP Workflow Lifecycle New. We built that one for today's presentation. We have 4 buckets here that we're going to be routing information through. The only 3 of those are we're really going to focus on today. So everything but the initial one. So let's just talk about the buckets first. What do these represent? So managers, obviously, that's something that has been escalated up the flagpole. In our use case today, that is an invoice of $10,000 or gets routed there, but only after it's been reviewed by a coder. So the coder bucket is any invoice where we did a lookup against a PO number and the PO number matched, and all the data that we collected off the invoice matches all the data from the PO. So we could either do that by looking at the actual document, the PO that we downloaded from your ERP, or doing a database lookup against your ERP or a staging table we created from your ERP. Doesn't actually have to be a live lookup in your ERP system necessarily. So that's the coder bucket. Then we also have this AP review bucket down here. These are invoices where we did not find a PO number or we found a PO number that we didn't have a match against. So Carousel, this particular one, there was no PO number, but we have a contract with this company for these services. So we've got a utility bill from Waste Management. There's typically no PO on those. So we send those through a different bucket, but we do have one in here. Scroll up and find it. For Carsoft, where we actually have a PO number on it. So I'm going to come in here and pull it up and view it. And then when we do, look at the invoice and the data, we have a related items tab. And we have 3 things we're matching against here. We can do 2-way matching, 3-way matching if we wanted to. So at this point, I'm looking at the receiving document. If I click on purchase orders, though, it tells me there are no documents to show, but this references a PO number. So we got a problem here. So we received an invoice, but for whatever reason, we didn't find a matching PO. So that usually means one of 2 things. Either we got the wrong PO number off the documents, which we didn't in this case, or maybe the invoice was generated with the wrong PO number coming from the vendor. But either way, we need to deal with some type of conflict resolution at this point. So I could reject it if I wanted to. And again, these are all configurable based on your user needs. These are all set up based on however you want them to be. I could escalate this up to a manager. I could escalate this to a special bucket called error resolution, or I could just approve it if there were circumstances that dictated that needed to happen at a particular point. So most of these non-PO based ones are going to be things like utility bills and things that you just don't need a PO number for that we can come in and approve. And some of these can be auto approved. You can set dollar limits and say, if these things match, if these things happen and it's under this dollar value, let's just approve it. So in this case, I'm just going to reject this one because for whatever reason, we don't want to pay this. This is either a bogus invoice that came in. We have a lot of fraud going on these days, or there's just, for whatever reason, I don't want to pay it. So I can reject that one. And it's going to remove it from my AP review queue. And we're now down to 8. So let's go up to our ones where we did have matches and let's look at some of the things we're matching. So we'll go back to our inbox. So the first one we'll do is we'll just do one of these Cornell ones. So we'll look at the Cornell one. If I come in here, go to related documents and look at my purchase order, I can see that, yeah, everything matches. If you wanted to scroll through here and look at all your items, you could. And you can launch this, dual monitor if you want to. All these things are undockable. And we support, multiple monitors. And they don't have to be dual. It could be 3 or 4, however many you choose to use. But in this case, we've got 2-way match here. We also have a receiving document. That's our 3rd match. So if I wanted to view that, I actually can see an image here of that receiving document. We also support e-signatures as well. So if we received this in, we wanted to scan it and stamp a signature of the person that opened that box and reviewed this, we could do that as well. And we could make that a requirement in the workflow if you wanted to. In this case, we didn't go that far. We just got the bill of lading in there. We matched it based off of the PO number so that now I can see the invoice, I can see the PO, and I can see whatever receiving document, whether that's a bill of lading or whatever it was called when we received that, those materials, services, whatever it was, and match all of that. So in this case, everything looks good. And in some workflow situations, we may auto approve something like this. We may not require an end user to come in here, and hit an approve button. But in today's presentation, we wanted to do it because we want you to see, what all is going on in the background. So here we've got a 3-way match that we've set up. Everything looks good. I'm going to hit approve. And you'll notice that we go from 28 items in the coder bucket, and we're still at 0 in managers because that one was under $10,000. So let's go find one that's above $10,000. We go back to our invoices and I go to vendor name, and you can filter through these things any way you want. So I'm going to, instead of scrolling through and looking for it, I'm just going to type in Ingram because I know I've got one out there for Ingram Micro. If I pull it up, scroll down, look at it, $37,624. So remember, we put a conditional procedure in that says anything over $10,000 that gets approved, everything matches, it's still got to go for manager review. So let's just make sure everything's looks good here. So I go to related documents. I can look at my receiver. I can look at my PO. And You can just take my word for it. Everything looks good. So we got this invoice in from Ingram. Our PO matches it. Our receiver document matches it. I hit approve invoice. This time, it should have to go to one more bucket before we're going to tell the ERP system we've approved this. So notice managers now goes from 0 to 1. That's our Ingram. So I can click on it. And as all of this is happening, we're going to actually be notifying your users, typically via email. And you can do group queues or individual queues or combinations of both. So when I routed this to this manager, we would have sent an email notification to the manager and notified them that hey, you've got a new invoice for $37,000 for Ingram Micro that requires your attention. We can even put a link in the email to launch the user experience, take them to the screen that we're looking at right now if we wanted to. And then we also can set cycle time. So we can even put that in the email if you wanted us to. So we've routed Ingram Micro to you for review approval. You've got 24 hours to get your work done. If you don't get your work done within 24 hours, we're going to start sending you nag emails. Maybe we'll send your manager emails notifying them that you've got late work. Maybe we'll pull it out of your queue and route it to one of your peers' queues, or all of the above could be done in the escalating procedures if you wanted us to. And then as all of this is going on, you have a dashboard that allows you to generate dynamic reports about your process. So if I wanted to see how many invoices have I received but not paid at this time, which buckets are they sitting in, which buckets are they sitting in the longest, which users are taking the longest to approve them, you can get dynamic real-time reports out of the system about all those types of things that's built into the solution. So here, same thing, I can come in here if I want to see the related items, I can come in here and display those, view those. But as the manager, I looked at this, said, yep, I remember this order. We got all this stuff in. It's already been deployed. I'm happy with it. So we're just going to approve. Now that one is going to be sent off to accounting to be paid. We'll notify the ERP system or whatever needs to happen at this point. There's, like I said, different levels of integration that can happen here, different levels of automation. But the goal is to come in and get these things paid on time with as little labor as possible, maximize the amount of discounts that we're taking for early payment. That's another thing we can build into the process. If I have invoices that come in for high dollar amounts, I have things like net 10 2, 2% discount for early payment within 10 days. Let's prioritize those and put those at the top of the bucket. I want those done quicker because there's financial advantages to those. Maybe I've got a vendor that I want to keep really high credit limits with because we order a lot of product from them. And for cash flow purposes, I don't want to ever get behind with them and risk having to prepay for stuff. So we can prioritize that vendor to the top of the bucket. Make sure that their invoices, as they go through these different buckets, always got put at the top of the list. We can even force users to have to process those first. So they can't go down the list and say, no, I want to pick this one because that's an easier one. This vendor never has many detailed line items. We actually can prevent that from happening inside the system. So giving you total control, not only of the content, but of the process around the content. And then again, history reports, all that type of information. So let's close out of here. Let's jump over back to our PowerPoint here. And as Tim mentioned, we're not going to PowerPoint you to death, but I did think it was important for us to show a visual of our design tool. And instead of opening up an admin tool and showing you how we build out a workflow and those things, I really just wanted to give you a visual. So it's a flow chart essentially, and you drag and drop items on there, and you can use different symbols for different things. So we have some things on here that are automated. We have some things on here that are human activities. Different colors represent different things, different blocks could. So in our demo we showed you today, we had the images come in from Grouper. Once they got into the repository, the first thing it did was an unattended activity to look to see if it has a PO number or not. If it does, it goes to this bucket up here. If it does not, it goes to this bucket down here. Then we go and do a three-way match. We didn't even talk about four-way matches, but we can go up to a four-way match with this system. So what's a four-way match? It's pretty rare that we see this, but there have been times where people say, we have an invoice, we have a PO, we have a receiver document, we also have an inspection that has to happen. And the really cool thing is we actually have a mobile inspection capability where if you wanted to use a tablet or whatever to open up the item, fill out a form to say it was inspected, and then have that form signed electronically and put in with the system, and then do a four-way match and include that in the history of the document. So now when I go in and pull up this invoice, related items would show me the PO, the receiver document, and the inspection. And with the inspection, I'd be able to tell who did the inspection, date, time, whatever notes we want to collect on that. All of those things, again, are automated. And then we've got our over 10K item over here so that we built in. And we could have tiers. We could have, if it's over 10K, it's got to go to this extra level. If it's over 100K, it's got to go 2 more steps. And if it's over $1 million, it's got to go to the CEO for approval. So there's several steps that have to happen before we actually get to payment. Payment could be something as simple as us just notifying the ERP system, or we also have integrations with payment automation technology that you could leverage as well. So there's lots and lots of different things that could be going on and happening as part of this workflow process. And again, although everyone's workflows and AP invoice automation needs are similar, I've never seen any two that are identical. Even when I see different departments within a company, there's usually little slight variances in how they want to handle certain things. And that's really the nice thing about the solution, is that it can accommodate all those little variances. And again, the goal here is the highest level of automation that we can give you. Reducing data entry, reducing prep work, sorting, not requiring a user to have to go pull pieces of paper, the invoice, the receiver document, log into an ERP to match it against the PO, go somewhere else to see if there was an inspection. We want that all to happen automatically. The only time a human should have to get involved is when there's exceptions. So if something didn't match up properly, a data validation rule didn't happen, then we'll have a human come in and eyeball it and see what the discrepancy was and either correct it or approve it, let it move on, or maybe escalate it up for some type of error or conflict resolution. That kind of covers what we wanted to show from a technology standpoint. So I'm going to pass it back over to Tim and let him summarize for you.
You did a pretty good job summarizing there, Jason. So I don't know, you might have stolen some thunder. So yeah,
Sorry about that, man.
That's all good.
Old habits die hard.
I know. So to summarize what we just looked at, we took 40 some odd pages into 37 invoices, imported them, scanned them, simulated, extracted the relevant data off of them, made decisions pulled that data off so we can make those decisions to authorize those invoices and get them into the payment processing system with minimal work. And we showed how the data is automatically validated and how we can utilize a human in the loop when we do need to correct something, when we have an exception or we have a broken business rule. We've also showed how various matching is very easy and very simple to be facilitated. And we showed how you can find those invoices again. That's part of this is the ongoing nature of the service you have to do as part of an AP department. And finally, something Jason mentioned, and I wanted to reiterate, is this entire system is completely flexible. We built this around a process that we use similarly in-house, but we know that AP processes are as different as the companies themselves. No two are ever alike. We built this demo a certain way, but regardless if your process is simpler or much more complex than this system can accommodate that. So that being said, I wanted to open this up to any questions. I think, Brad, did we have, look at the chat. I know we've been answering some of them as we go.
Yeah, he just sent me one via Teams, said that Jennifer had a question, wanted to know, does this run on OnBase? So the easy, quick answer is yes. That's actually part of what you saw today was OnBase as the enterprise content management system. So that's really just your long-term storage system, and then OnBase workflow for the routing. And then Grouper was the front end piece that automated the scan, capture, and all of that. The answer is yes, it absolutely can run with OnBase, but the system is designed to be agnostic. So if you're watching today and you're like, I don't know what OnBase is, I don't use it, but I've got Box or SharePoint or FileNet or Alfresco or Laserfish, or I can go on and on. We can work with all those systems. So if you've already made an investment in some technology that you're using related to storing images with metadata, possible workflow, there's a very high probability that we can work with that solution. But specifically, what you saw today was a product called Grouper, which is developed by BIS. It's what's called an IDP platform, Intelligent Document Processing Platform, paired with OnBase for the content and the workflow.
I don't think we have any more questions that have come in, so I think we've been pretty efficient here, or we bored everybody. So one of the two. So.
Hopefully we answered everybody's questions.
Right.
And what usually happens is 10 minutes after we close this session, you're going to go, oh man, I wish I had asked Jason and Tim this. Please, if those types of things pop in your head after the fact, reach back out to us, let us know. Everyone that is registered for this call probably will get a follow-up email from their BIS representative just to see if you have any questions, to see if maybe there's any more information you would like, if you'd like a one-on-one type presentation or an assessment. That's one of the things we do a lot of times for our customers is We'll look at your documents, look at your volumes, look at your process, and then come back and make some recommendations to you. That's part of the process that we go through. So we're more than happy to engage with your organization and start that assessment process, and then come back and give you recommendations on where we think we could help you. Not everybody has the volume to support full-on automation. You may not need workflow, but we may get ROI just out of automating the scan process, or just creating full text searchable PDFs and putting them into a system for easier access in certain cases. So there's all different levels of this you can implement. It doesn't have to be full-on automation. The Cadillac isn't always the best solution. It doesn't always provide the most value. For a lot of our customers, they get value just simply off of digitizing the content and making it more easily accessible. And sometimes that's phase one. You always use the analogy, how to eat it one bite at a time. You don't try to swallow the whole thing at once. So a lot of times our recommendations will be, let's just start digitizing the information. Get your users used to working with electronic invoices, and then let's slowly start implementing next steps. We can add on a simple workflow that we can continue to evolve and add more and more levels of automation over time, if need be. Or in some cases, you may not ever need that. You maybe just digitizing the information gives you all the value you need. Like I said, a lot of times it depends on the number of vendors you're processing information for, the number of invoices that you're receiving, the number of employees you have participating in these. And these are all things that we have as an organization, 35 plus years experience helping customers automate. So we do this for a lot of people. It's something we have a team that works with clients to analyze and assess their needs and help them not just buy technology, but fix a problem and do it in a responsible manner that generates value for your organization. You're going to save money or make money when you work with us. We don't want to just sell you stuff that just because it's shiny and pretty.
And no shelfware.
Absolutely. Exactly.
I appreciate everybody's time. And again, we'll be following up with everyone, and we'll give you some time back in your day, which I'm sure everybody appreciates. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We'll be checking back with you. Thank you, everyone, for your time. We greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.